There is a growing list of names on the New York Islanders roster that fans want to see bought out. Despite this, I'm here to tell you that all signs point to the Islanders buying out no players this offseason. And while that might ruffle some feathers, I think this is the right decision. We're going to break it down on this episode of Islanders Digest, really dive into the financials of the salary cap this season for the team, and explain that while it's not the best situation in terms of players that you really don't want to see on your roster having to take up space, in terms of the salary cap, the Islanders don't need money this season and are in pretty good shape moving forward. I tend to not like buyouts. I know a lot of fans are a fan of them, or not a fan of them, but like to talk about them as a way to get rid of bad players, and I understand why. You get cap relief in the short term. My issue with buyouts is they come with a long-term consequence, and especially when your team isn't in full-on win-now mode or trying to retain a player you desperately need to keep. I don't think buyouts are a good idea in the NHL. I don't think they're worth it, and in the Islanders situation, it definitely doesn't make sense to use one because I don't think this is a team that should be spending to the cap. Before we dive into all that, this video is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 sports pick app in the United States. You can download using the link in the description below, and when you do, be sure to use code DIGEST. It really helps us out on this channel. Prize Picks is the best place to get in on all the action of the NHL playoffs. When you play $5, you can get $50 instantly in lineups. I have some picks for you at the end of this video relating to the Game 7 between the Buffalo Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens. But first, let's talk about these 4 players that are candidates to be bought out by the New York Islanders. I think we all know the names: Ondrej Palat, Pierre Engvall, Anthony Duclair, and then Scott Mayfield. And I will say right off the bat, Duclair should not be a buyout candidate. I see a lot of Islanders accounts, channels talking about buying out Anthony Duclair. Duclair had 27 points this season, 12 goals in 60 games, put up some decent offense, and only has a $3.5 million salary cap for 2 more years. There's going to be a lot of difficulty in the NHL finding players to play in third-line roles. The Islanders should have no problem moving Anthony Duclair. The return is going to be terrible, but you can move that contract pretty easily now and take a small return, like a 4th-round pick, to get rid of it, or even a $1 million 4th line or something like that to get out of that Anthony Duclair contract. Last year, this wasn't possible because he had a full no-trade clause and he wanted to stay. Now he can be traded to half the teams in the league. So Duclair, I think, if the Islanders want him gone, he's gone. Don't need to buy him out. There's another name on this list that I don't think should even be considered for a buyout, and that is Scott Mayfield. This is a controversial take. I actually think while Scott Mayfield isn't worth his $3.5 million cap hit, I think what he brings on the ice is still worth around $2.5 million. And when you factor that into the fact that if you buy out Scott Mayfield, you don't save that much money because you then have to spend that money on a new 6th defenseman Scott Mayfield type player, I think you're better off keeping Scott Mayfield. Now, that can change as he continues to age, but as of right now, I think he still is a useful NHLer, or at the very worst, a 7th defenseman that can step into the NHL. And as long as he's that and also a 6'5" right-handed defenseman, I don't think there's any need to buy out Scott Mayfield. You could make a very convincing argument that Ondrej Palat should be bought out. And the fact that we were talking about potentially buying out when that trade happened, listen, I defend the trade at the time. I will still say people who are saying this Ondrej Palat trade is ruining the Islanders' future are seriously overreacting. As we're going to talk about in this video, it doesn't really impact much of anything because of their salary cap situation. But yes, it is a bad contract, and if you do need more money this offseason, that is the first place to look. And then the final contract here is Pierre Engvall. Engvall missed all last season. I almost forgot he was on this team, but he's on this team for a good amount of years. He's got 5 years left on that contract at $3 million. So he is another buyout candidate who I think would be unlikely anyway because you can bury that contract. But before we kind of talk about what it'd be like to buy out these players, the reason why this doesn't make sense for the New York Islanders is the Islanders have money next year. The Islanders, some people don't seem to realize how much the New York Islanders have available to use in this offseason, but their salary cap situation actually isn't that bad. They don't have a lot of money to make a big addition, but the thing is, if you look at their active roster, they already have 19 out of 23 spots filled. That's only 4 spots to fill, and when you look at $12.5 million, that's basically a little bit over $4 million per player, which when you consider that 2 of these spots are more depth roles, plenty of money to either keep who you got or even make a key upgrade. Now, I will also mention, because last time I used this graphic, some people were confused. Yes, this does include the rise in salary cap, so the Islanders aren't getting $12 million plus the $9.5 million raise. That's baked in there. And Matthew Schaefer's his bonus overage from last season, because he earned all his bonuses, good for him, is also included in that money. So it's not like it's actually $9 million the Islanders have. They have that full $12.5 million to spend. With that being said, looking at this roster, because sometimes you have a few contracts, and then the contracts you don't have are very valuable players you need to sign. The 2 players you realistically would consider re-signing, because I don't want to say you need to sign, Anders Lee, who I think if you can get him on a discount, I think is worth bringing back. We can discuss that more in another episode. But Anders Lee, and then you have Tony DeAngelo. Those 2 players last season costed under $10 million. You should be able to get them way under that, because Lee, if he's staying, is taking a discount. Maybe Tony gets a bit of a raise. Combine that with some more term. I don't think he's signing another 1-year contract. But then you look at the other contracts the Islanders need to bring in. It's Maxim Shabanov. If he stays and doesn't decide to go back to KHL, that's to be a $1 million minimum deal. Mark Gatcomb, same thing. So you basically have $10 million to figure out what you want to do with those 2 players, or visit free agency to get a big acquisition. And the main argument, I think, for buying out players that fans have is they want to add something to this roster. Rightfully so. This roster didn't make the playoffs. If you're losing Lee, it's getting even worse. The problem with the whole making money, trying to use money in free agency, this is a terrible free agent class. Some people will make the Darren Radish argument or the Alex Tuck argument. Look, those are 2 players who would improve the Islanders team. They are a little up there in age, so you could regret, and Darren Radish is primed for a bit of regression, though I like the player. My issue with this is if you look at every single team and what they want to do with free agency, everyone is talking about Alex Tuck. Everyone is talking about, especially Darren Radish. It's very unlikely these players are available, and if you go on the next tier of this free agency, your Manthas, your Zuccarellos, your Arvisons, go down the list. This is not a very good list of free agency. I would be so frustrated if the Islanders signed a player like Rasmus Andersson, even a player like Bobby McMann. I think he's primed to take a step back. And then I cut it off after Anders Lee, because going below Anders Lee, kind of, if you're going to get a free agent scorer and they scored less points than Anders Lee, well, then in my opinion, just keep Anders Lee. There's really no point beyond there. There's just not a lot of free agents to talk about this year. The Islanders should not try to spend $10 million on this free agent market because it'll look really bad. The only player I can make an argument for is John Carlson. Absolutely, I would love to sign John Carlson on a short-term contract to be Matthew Schaefer's partner. No, I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, you could just not bring back Lee and use that $10 million, a good portion of it, to bring in John Carlson. And then you wouldn't have to worry about Tony DeAngelo because John Carlson is an upgrade there. And you can just sign a league minimum contract or bring up Victor Eklund, and that's your last forward spot. And it's just, my point is even if you make a big acquisition in free agency, the Islanders don't need more money. As for the trade acquisition aspect, This is also a situation where the Islanders don't need more, because any impact player you're bringing in, you're gonna have to be sending a roster player back. A lot of people say like, "Oh, this is a huge detriment because with only $112 million, we can't bring in a guy like Robert Thomas." Or another example is the better example for me is Jason Robertson. Jason Robertson, if you're trading for Jason Robertson, something good from your lineup is going back the other way, which will help nullify the money. Maybe it's a player like Mathew Barzal. I'm not trying to get into that in too much detail. My point is, there really is no way for the Islanders to spend this $12 million in a way that is, or spend more than this $12 million in a way that is intelligent. So they just shouldn't. The Islanders don't need to spend money this offseason. Therefore, they don't need to buy out players. So we can take a look at what that would look like. And if the Islanders are going to buy out one player, say they need a little bit of money for something, because who knows, maybe Mathew Darche knows something, I don't. The player to buy out is Ondrej Palat because he makes $6 million. It is a 1-year contract, 1 year left in the contract, which means if the Islanders bought this contract out, they would save $2.7 million they'd save $3.3 million this season, and they lose $1.6 million next season. That's not so bad. If the Islanders need $3 million, I would do that. Beyond that, I don't think it makes sense. The other player we talked about how Scott Mayfield, I think, is not worth buying out. The other player is Pierre Engvall, and if you want to save money on Pierre Engvall, or you want to bring up another player, you can just send him down to the minors. The one argument you could make with Ondrej Palat is when you look by his name, he does have an anchor. That means he cannot be sent down to the AHL. I would just have him as one of your 2 healthy scratches. You need to have a healthy scratch all season long. Everyone wants to bring in young players, I agree, but there's no reason for a young player to come in and play on this team and then be in the press box every single day. Somebody has to be scratched. Why not scratch Palat? I also think he'd be a fine 4th-line winger. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'd love to know if you want to buy a Palat. I'd love to know if you have a reason in the comments below. But for me, this team, they don't need more money. That $12 million isn't a lot compared to what other teams have. But the Islanders don't need to have to do a lot of business. There's really nobody in this list that they're all at risk at losing. Even if they want to play the offer sheet game, Maverick Bourque is a popular topic right now. You can give Maverick Bourque $4.5 million to pry him away from Dallas, and then just allocate that money, assuming you're bringing Tony DeAngelo back better, because if you're bringing in Maverick Bourque, then you're not bringing in Lee. So it's a situation where they don't need money. And yes, that also does mean that they're not drastically changing this roster because it is pretty locked in. It is what it is. And I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this in the comments below. But yeah, based on the Islanders' salary cap, and it can change in the future. Like me saying the Islanders should not buy out players right now, maybe in 2 years you really need that defensive spot from Scott Mayfield or something like that. It's always available. My thing with buyouts is just waiting that extra year or 2 longer. Say the Islanders are destined to buy out Pierre Engvall, but they wait 2 seasons to do it. That's 2 less seasons in the future that you're not paying his contract out in terms of ruining your long-term future with that money. It just does not make sense to buy a player out in this, at least in my opinion. Maybe I'm missing something. We got to talk about my picks for this game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres. Alex Tuch has not had a point this entire series. I really want to see him get one because I really want to see the Sabres beat the Montreal Canadiens. That being said, I don't think it's going to happen. So while I do think Buffalo's going to win, I think Tuch is going to be pointless again. The reason why I don't really want him in free agency. And then I have Nick Suzuki getting a point. Montreal is going to get power plays in this game. And when they do, Nick Suzuki is going to get an assist. Be sure to download Prize Picks if you haven't already. And tomorrow is Taco Tuesday, so you'll get discounts on all player projections. Just another way to join in on all the fun with Prize Picks. I hope you enjoyed this video about buyouts. Sorry if I rambled a bit on there, but my name is Patrick Nilan. That's to do it for this episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders. Don't buy out any contracts. It's not worth it.